Hi, my name is Matt Ackerson. I'm the founder of petovera.com. Petovera, we are your web marketing partner on demand, and we specialize in sales funnel design. Today, I'm joined by my friend and fellow mastermind member, Brian Casal. And Brian is an expert in productizing businesses. He also runs his own business, restaurantengine.com, and has just launched a new one called audienceops.com. And I brought Brian on today because this is something that I'm personally interested in, and I know that many of our audience members are interested in it because the majority of the people in our audience run service businesses. And going through the process of productizing your own business now, I have a lot of questions, and I know that a lot of people in our audience have questions too. For example, what is a productized business in the first place, and what can it do? Why should I care about it as far as building my company? So Brian, thanks for joining us today. And what would you say before we get into your background and your story? What is a productized business? Why should someone care?
Yeah, Matt, great to be back on here. Good to talk to you as always. Productized services. Why should someone care? I mean, I tend to teach and speak to a lot of freelancers and consultants who do like freelance web design or freelance copywriting, freelance designers, developers. And I come from a background as a freelance web designer, so. In my case, I got pretty burnt out with the traditional model of freelancing, whether that's by the hour or I used to kind of charge by project. And why it really matters is that I was kind of living just project to project. And I think that's how most freelancers live. And that's not necessarily making a bad living. I mean, it was pretty comfortable, I was working with all sorts of different clients and bigger and better clients as the years went on. But as those years went on, I just got a little bit burnt out on it. Between the feast and famine cycle of, some months you have some great projects come in, and other months, projects get delayed and finish dates get delayed and that sort of thing. And then you got to chase down unpaid invoices and just all these things start to add up after a while. The other thing that really got to me is just like clients who don't really value the work. I'd constantly have to like explain to them why this is important or make a certain recommendation, and then they would say something, and then I'd have to push back on things. We all kind of see that happen. These are all little things that just add up to the bigger picture of just burning out on that traditional model of freelancing. But the thing that really got to me, and I think this plays right into productized services, is the whole discovery process, right? Like when you have a new prospect come to you, maybe it's through a referral or they come to your website or whatever, they say like, hey, I'm interested in starting with you, I'm interested in talking to you about a potential new project. From there, typically you'd go through some discovery process, like have a meeting or a discussion or a series of discussions, get the scope, figure out what their requirements are, what they want, and then you have to go back and create a long proposal and put together a custom solution just for them, and then you send them the proposal, the estimate, the quote, whatever it is, and then it comes back, and maybe 50-50, you win some, you lose some, and that whole process, it just got really, really draining on me, because every single time I found that I was redefining my value proposition. Like every single client that came to me had different needs. They had a different problem to solve. Like at one point I was working on a website for a university. Another time I was working on a website for a doctor. Another one was an e-commerce site. Another one was a blogger. Like every one of these has a different problem or pain point. So fast forward into productized services, the whole goal here is to solve one problem for one ideal customer with one really efficient solution. And your solution, your service, the set of things that you build into that service is specifically designed to solve this one single problem that this one ideal customer has. And then once you figure out that focus, you can optimize every aspect of the service. You can streamline every part of the system because it's done the same way, more or less. It's done the same way every single time, according to the same process, the same systems. And then eventually you can, if you want, you don't have to do this, but you can design the business to run without you. And that's essentially what I've done with Restaurant Engine. I mean, today that business runs entirely without me. I spend about 2 hours or less per month running that. And the way that and it's took me like 4 years to get to this point, but the way that happened is that we deliver one service the same way just about every time. And because of that, I've been able to streamline every step in that process and put people in place, do a little bit of software automation, and kind of put those two together so that this thing kind of runs predictably, every day, every week, every month.
Very cool. So just to give the audience a sense, you don't have to reveal this if you're not comfortable, but are you comfortable revealing revenue figures for Restaurant Engine, since that is kind of the primary case study in your case?
No, not really. I don't really reveal too many revenue numbers in general. I mean, I can say like low 5 figures a month, but it's
And you spend 2 hours a week on it.
yeah. My thing with revenue numbers in general, this is kind of a sidebar, I guess, but I don't know. I don't, just personally, I've never really felt totally comfortable with like being completely transparent about every dollar amount, the whole monthly revenue reports that we see everywhere these days. I don't think that they're really that important and that valuable. They're good for getting clicks and traffic, I guess, but it's not for the person reading it. I think it's a little bit misleading, because it glosses over what actually matters, and that's profit margins, that's value propositions, and that's understanding your customer. Putting the right plans and pieces together. I mean, a top line revenue number is not going to really teach you much. So I never really found any value in focusing on that.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you revealing what you did, though, in terms of the time and the general range, though, because I think for our audience, they like to understand for sure, okay, like you can run a business that size and larger and only be putting it and be saving as much time as you are and have the business really ironed out. So I think that just really validates and speaks to the concept of productizing. Well, let's go back. So you started off as a freelancer, and you said that you were burning out, and that's why you started Restaurant Engine. And then why don't you talk a little bit about why you decided on Restaurant Engine? How did you actually come to that market, to that being your focus? Because you talked about this concept of focus too.
Yeah. So I wasn't very focused, to tell you the truth. I was doing a lot of different products, but that was the one that kind of stuck, and I stuck with it for a while. That was partly why I think it ended up working out, is because I simply stuck with it longer than I did with other things. But the way that I came to it was, as I said, I was a freelance web designer. I was doing most of my work on WordPress, and then I was very familiar with the WordPress platform and all the different tools that went into that. I also, by that point, had built up a good small network of other designers and developers that I knew very well and that I had worked with on client projects. And so I knew that I'd have people that I can work with to help me get Restaurant Engine built and launched and launched to paying customers. So I saw all the pieces in place, and the thing that I really wanted to do was was launch a hosted web design service on WordPress, because what I saw, and this is not necessarily anything new or groundbreaking, but just the whole process of building a site on WordPress is it's actually really hard and daunting for a small business owner to do themselves. I mean, yeah, all the tools these days are pretty easy to work with if you're familiar with them. Like, you can get a web host, you can install WordPress, you can go grab a WordPress theme, you can install a bunch of plugins, you can configure them, you can make some customizations, configure it the way that you want. All those steps don't take a whole lot of time, and it's all relatively cheap if you can do it yourself. But most people don't even know, especially small business owners and like restaurant owners, don't even know like what a web hosting provider is, let alone being able to install WordPress or find a WordPress theme. I mean, these things are, they just don't care about that stuff. They're running a business. They're running their restaurant. So I want to do that. In terms of getting to the restaurant market, that was pretty random, actually. So the idea didn't start with restaurants. It just started with the idea of doing some kind of hosted web design service delivered as a SaaS built on WordPress. But then the next thought that I had was just thinking about WordPress themes. And I had sold WordPress themes before, just like one-off digital download themes. And the challenge with those, and the same challenge with doing client web design work, is that all clients have different requirements. And you have to design a theme with all these like different options built in so that they can make any and every customization that they could ever want to do. I knew that in this hosted web design service, it would have to be much more focused. I'd have to find some way so that all clients across all websites basically have the same set of requirements. And that led me to the thought that, okay, then we have to serve some kind of niche. So it has to be like all doctors' sites or all restaurant sites or all something else. Because, when you look at those, and I focus on restaurants, all restaurants basically need a food menu. They need to show their hours. They need to show maybe some upcoming events, their location, some photos. There's just a focused list of features that I could build in, and then I wouldn't have to build in like other features and make it really bloated. So that's why I ended up, focusing on one niche. And then ultimately it also helped when it came to marketing, because, once you know who your one ideal customer is, then you can build the marketing plan to just attract that one customer. And like getting back to the productizing and doing freelance web design work, everybody struggles with, how do I get more clients? How do I get better clients? And how do I get a steady stream of leads coming in? You can't do that unless you know who your ideal customer is. And that has to be a very focused thing, because if you're like me and like most freelance web designers, back when I was doing it a couple of years ago, I was working with universities, e-commerce shops, bloggers, everyone, like anyone who came. So there's no way to market to that. You can't just say like, I serve everyone who wants a website. That's not a marketing plan. It's impossible to attract consistently a consistent lead stream unless you know who it is that you're actually trying to attract.
So part of the reason for choosing a specific market niche is because the set of requirements are pretty consistent. Now, a lot of people would say, I can imagine them saying in my audience, saying, well, Brian, if I chose a market niche with this established business that I have, I'd basically be firing half of my clients, and I'm scared to do that. I'm scared to focus in this way. And I can see, how it would make us more efficient, because we're doing more of the same with less variation. Like there's less customization, and we're just doing one thing particularly well over and over again. But what do you say to that objection, that I don't want to do it because I worry that I'd be firing half my customers and I wouldn't make it back?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say fire your customers, and I wouldn't make this personally. I would not make this like an overnight switch. It's something that you need to learn over time. If you're making that transition from freelance work into a more productized version of that. I think it's something that you need to kind of phase in over time and learn as you go. Figure out who, out of all these different clients that you serve, which ones are actually most ideal and which ones are not. Like you have to work with a lot of different clients in order to actually learn that. And then once you learn that, then you can start to take concrete steps towards reaching that target client, whether it's creating content that speaks to them, or attending conferences where they're going to be, or networking in communities where they are. Once you know who are your most ideal customers, then you can go out and get them. So I think, I don't know, I mean, I guess to speak to that concern of, you're cutting out, I don't really see it as like cutting out potential business, because what you're doing by not focusing on who your target customer is, you're kind of crippling yourself when it comes to marketing. Like, you can't have a real marketing plan unless you know who you're trying to reach.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me give you an example, and because I want to address some of the objections that I can kind of imagine my audience saying here. Another one might be, well, I worry that this idea of productizing my business would be too rigid. So for example, yesterday I was on the phone with a client, and they were looking at one of our packages for our custom landing page, which we're in the process of productizing as one of our services. And we have the regular landing page, and then we have the pricing landing page that they're redirected to. And they were looking at this, and they were like, okay, well, I love this package, but it needs this feature that's in the higher package, and the price point just doesn't match up for me. So I'm still in the stage of learning where, okay, I might be switching features around and whatnot to figure out, what is going to 80-20 the market as far as, features and benefits. But that's, if I'm doing that on a consistent basis going forward, then I'm not really productizing the business. So I worry that if that's my goal, is it unrealistic to think about like this? And does it create a sense of rigidity that's going to hurt the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can go a number of ways with this, and it doesn't necessarily have to be one price point all the time. You can have a little bit of flexibility in there. You can have certain like ranges. Like in my new business in audience ops, some of the packages have kind of a range, and that gives me a little bit of wiggle room to tailor certain aspects. Like I'll kind of put them within certain confines, or like we do like 3 or 4 things within this package, but if you only need 3 out of those 4, then we'll adjust that price within these brackets. So that's one way of approaching it. But again, if you're going through this learning process over a course of many months, and you're finding that a lot of those questions that come up about price and about scope can help you inform, like, all right, well, maybe we should tweak the service offerings. Like, for instance, in audience ops, it's only 1 month old, and I've already changed the pricing structure, or really just what's included in the pricing brackets, like three times now in the last month, just based on the conversations that I've had with customers. The last thing that I would add here, this is probably the most important thing, is like, once you know who your ideal customer is, and you know what the specific problem is that you're trying to solve for them, it's up to you to put together the most ideal solution for that problem. And you're basically dictating to the client, like, look, you have this problem. This is the best solution that we know of to give you the best result, and that's the result that you're hoping for. And so here is that, that's the end goal that you're trying to get towards. After you learn all this stuff about specifically who is your target customer, what industry or industries do they operate in, what size business are they in, what role within that company is the person that you need to reach. Once you learn all these things, you can start to understand like, well, what is the key problem that they're going to need solved, and then you can design your service to be the solution to that problem.
In terms of scope of what productize actually covers, does it only cover the marketing aspects as far as?
You mean the course?
Yeah,
Or
and the productized concepts, and yeah, I guess the course too, like what you actually teach. Does it only cover? Um, and by the way, for if you're listening to this, and you want to check out Brian's course, I will link to it directly below this video. But
no, but it actually it covers. So the course. Well, let me step back and just talk about the concept, because I actually wrote an article about this today. The whole productized services is, yes, it's an easier way to sell a consulting service, I believe, and I've seen that again and again with a lot of people. I've seen it myself. Again, when you target when you package a specific solution that solves this problem for this customer, the value proposition is there, and the thing kind of sells itself as long as you're really connecting with that right customer. And so that makes selling it easier, but it's also about, and this is what I wrote about today, it's not just about making an easier way to sell a service, it's about creating a better version of the service than what the client would otherwise get. Their other options are to hire a freelancer by the hour or to do it themselves. So the productized service needs to be a better option than that. It's not just an alternate option. It's actually better. They're getting more benefits. They're getting a better result, a more consistent result, a more reliable result. That's the whole point of doing it. So like I was writing about audience ops, and this is what I'm working on this month with audience ops is making sure that when someone hires us to manage their blog, it's consistently a better result for them than if they were to write their own blogs in-house, or if they were to hire a freelance writer to do it. And we've designed systems, we've designed processes and a team and resources to really to put that, to deliver that solution, that the blog will actually perform and help you get more customers. And I included a specific set of things in that deliver that result.
Can the productized concept be applied to any sort of service business model? Like, for example, say a software consulting company that's consulting with Fortune 500 businesses, and average project size is 5 and 6 figures, and they might say, oh well, for that type of business, you have to get on the phone, you have to build a relationship, you have to invest a lot of time up front, and everything has to be custom.
Yeah, I mean, you can. There's a number of ways you can go with this, but you can kind of break out certain pieces of your service and kind of productize those. So maybe it's the discovery phase, like the speccing a certain custom web application. Maybe that is a productized service, just kind of delivering the specs and the game plan. Or you're working with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, but you can find a specific problem that a segment of those companies all have, and you can become the company who specializes in solving, I don't know what it is, like invoicing on a nationwide level for a big company. There's some kind of complication in these large organizations where they need to account for certain things in their invoices, and you've seen this problem crop up again and again and again in different client companies. You can speak right to that problem and say, look, we've done this, we've implemented this solution for X, Y, and Z company. We can deliver it for your company if you resonate with that problem.
Hmm. So it sounds like for someone listening to this, the first step would be to really pick that niche target market. What would be the second step?
Yeah, and by the niche, so like Restaurant Engine, I chose to go with an industry, restaurants, but I wouldn't necessarily say you have to go with one industry. For example, in Audience Ops, it's not really targeted at one industry. It's targeted at B2B software companies. So that's, like SaaS companies and some digital download companies, but but those are operate in different industries, but they're all B2B, and they all serve kind of entrepreneurs and business owners. So that's how we're kind of focusing. The next step is to focus in on that problem and solution, and kind of come up with the value proposition. Again, that can happen over a number of months. It can be based on your experience. Try to find something that's a high value problem, so something that people actually pay for, and so that would be the next step. And then after that, and this is a very fast way of looking at it. This is something that you'd work at, and there are many more intricacies to this process. But the next step after that would be to standardize everything that you're doing. So the service that you're delivering, who you're delivering it for. Now, how are you actually going to deliver that service? There are probably 10 different ways that you can deliver the same service. 10 different tools you can use, 10 different methodologies you could use, 10 techniques you can use. And essentially they all do the same thing, but it's just 10 different ways to do the same thing. But you need to choose one way, choose one set of tools, one methodology, and make that your standard system. And what that does is it allows you to then be able to know, okay, this is our process. Now how can we start to streamline it? We know we do it the same way every single time. It takes these steps. And then eventually you can get to the point where you start to bring in other people, and you can remove yourself from each one of those steps. And that comes through documenting the process, and then eventually delegating it and kind of refining the process over time.
As far as systemizing a business goes, it sounds like if we were to kind of like place the productized concept on a spectrum, productizing is kind of like a slice, like a specific part of the bigger picture of systemizing your business. Is that right?
I don't know. I mean, it depends how you want to look at it. I use the concept, the term productize, I guess fairly loosely. It doesn't really have a true meaning. It's however you want to look at it. But I think of the word productize as an alternate way, or a better way than the traditional freelancing model, which is basically just time for money. Productizing, I think, starts to incorporate value, like what does the customer actually care about and what's the result they're going to get. Productizing starts to incorporate systems. I think that's very much part of it. Standardizing what you do, focusing on what you do, focusing on one client, one solution, one problem. And then all of that taken together allows you to start to look at it like a real business and not just selling time for money. Because once you have those pieces in place, the focus, the value proposition, who you're serving, then you can start to be a real business, which is, okay, developing a marketing plan. How are we going to get in front of this customer? How are we going to grow this thing? How are we going to grow our team? Who are the right people that we need to put in place? Then you can start to be strategic, and I talk a lot about the whole concept of working on your business and not in your business, and that comes from the book The E-Myth Revisited. But the whole concept of working in your business is kind of working project to project, being caught up in the mundane kind of daily tasks of working on the business, or working in the business. And then working on the business is building those systems, figuring out who your target customer is, and kind of being methodical and growing it.
And you mentioned that in the beginning when you were freelancing and you were exchanging time for money, you said that you felt like you were burning out a lot. Since you productized Restaurant Engine, how has that kind of changed your perspective and what you feel on a day-to-day basis?
It is nice, knowing that the business runs itself, and even it's got to the point now where I get a notification on my phone that we just got a new customer, and I know, and what that shows me is that this person came to our website probably a couple of weeks ago, and they requested a consultation, and someone on my team followed up with them, and now they signed up and they paid, and now the customer support team is taking them through our process, and they're setting up their new website, and they're going to connect their domain, and then they're going to go live, and we're going to be hosting and managing their website. And my only touch on that was seeing that little notification on my phone. That's definitely a nice feeling, and these days, I'm only spending like 2 hours a month on it, but it really took like 4 years of building this thing and working many hours on these systems, writing. We have something like 80 plus procedures written out in this business, trying things and failing and figuring things out. And so that's, sorry, it's kind of bug here, but that's been fun. And I think it's right now it's at this point where it really kind of runs itself, and that's nice. And now I can take all these lessons that I learned the hard way and apply them into this new business, audience ops. And I'm having a lot of fun with that because it's moving really, really fast, like way faster than Restaurant Engine did. And it's fun because I can take everything that I learned in 4 years and kind of apply it like on day one in the new business. So that's kind of exciting.
That is exciting.
And I'm learning all new things in this one because it's a different type of business. So
Yeah, I'm going through the process now, and even just the idea that people are seeing prices before we even get on the phone and discuss it, it feels like the quality of conversation and the just knowing that they're that much more educated about price points, about how we deliver the service, about our reputation. It just makes the whole relationship and the start to that relationship more efficient for me and for them.
yeah, I am a strong believer in somehow showing prices early in the process. Like that might not necessarily mean publishing them right on your website. Currently, I do that, but I went back and forth. I might at some point take them off the audience ops site, but I might keep them on. It's working just fine. The point is to get numbers out there early in the process, and maybe they're not exact price numbers. It could be a couple of different packages. It could be some kind of range, but at least before they get on the phone with you, they've seen the ballpark, or at least a baseline of what they're going to see when working with you. So to have that expectation, because the last thing that you want to do is spend an hour on the phone with someone and your rates are in the $5,000 range and they're thinking $500. It's just a waste of everybody's time. So you want to make sure that, and it also gets back to knowing who your target client is. You're not targeting $500 clients, and you're also not targeting $50,000 clients if that's not what you're doing. So I think showing the price is good.
What about for the higher touch aspect that you were talking about before? So like with Restaurant Engine, someone would come to the site and yes, they would go through that digital sales funnel that you already have set up there, and they can buy on the spot if they want. I think you still have that feature enabled, but they can request a consultation if they have questions so they can, talk to a real live human being. How do you systemize that aspect? Because that requires, number one, you went through this process where you handed it off to another person, and then that person is now getting results for you as far as sales goes. And I think that for a lot of service business owners, that's a big step right there. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, almost every client, every customer that comes into Restaurant Engine has spoken to our salesperson. Um, it's it's pretty rare. It happens, but it's pretty rare that someone just comes to the site and signs up. And partly that's because we charge them on day one with a setup fee. So they usually want us to speak to somebody. But we've done things like we've added video demos that kind of educate them before they get on that call. But I basically just I hired someone a little bit over a year ago to take over that role of doing those consultation calls because I had been doing it myself for over a year. I was doing them like 4 or 5 hours a day, just calling up restaurants who requested consultations. And over that year or two of doing it myself, I learned a lot. I learned all the most common questions that they ask. I learned the common responses, the answers to the objections, and then I documented all those things. And then I gave those guidelines and those procedures to the new salesperson. And then I spent a couple of months kind of training her. And at first she would kind of shadow me on calls, and then pretty soon I let her do calls. And then she would just kind of escalate questions up to me when she's not sure. And then over a course of like 3 to 6 months, all the most common questions she now has the answer to. So then after 6 months, it kind of drastically reduces the number of questions that she's unable to answer herself. And then the other thing is, and we do this for everyone, the customer support team and the sales, we have like an internal FAQ where we just document all questions or all the most common questions that come in so that we always have an answer. And that also reduces the number of things that get escalated up to me. So that really helps.
With these personal consultations that that your salesperson is doing, was she able to take them over because you were doing such volume in terms of leads? Because I think that some businesses might worry, if I start handing off leads to someone else, I'm worried that they're just going to be costing us sales because they have to be trained and there's like a ramp up period. As you said, 6 months was when the questions started to kind of decrease as far as what
Yeah,
she...
but like, yeah, no, I mean, I think she's done a really great job. I think sales only actually increased, and I think that's partly because we've had increasing traffic over time, but also she's just done a great job. Like her close rate has increased over time.
You didn't worry that you were handing off like half the leads to her? You were like, oh, well, what if we don't make these sales because she's still so
No,
used to
and
it?
the other thing is, like, even if she doesn't know how to answer a certain question, it's not going to cost us a sale. Like she would just say like, oh, well, let me, I'm going to double check on that and I'll get right back to you. Because she always does a follow-up email, and then she'll always do a follow-up call. So, all the most common questions she has the answers to, and then the fringe questions, the special cases, she'll kind of double check and then get right back to them on that. And that's what a consultation is. That I think most customers are fine with, as long as they get the answer in the end. It works out.
Cool. Let's see. I think I have one more question, then we'll wrap up. So, if you productize a business, actually no, we answered that question. Is productizing a fad?
Is productizing a fad?
Yeah. Is it just a new name for an old concept?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's sure. I mean, yeah, I don't think that productized services are really a new concept by any means, and I'm certainly not even the first one to start talking about them in that way. A big reason why I started the course was from seeing what other people are doing with productized services. Like a huge part of what I put into the course were these case studies of what guys like Nick DeSabato are doing, Philip Morgan, Kai Davis, Dan Norris, Joanna Wiebe, all these people are doing they're productizing some kind of service in many different ways, and that was really inspiring to me. So I did a lot of research into what they're doing, combined with the stuff that I learned building my businesses, and kind of formed the course around that kind of material. And then this year, launched the course about 8 months ago. It's been going really well. We have this community built in there too, which has been awesome. But this year I'll be updating the course with some new lesson materials, additional case studies. A lot of the students who've gone through Productize have been doing really well. So I want to get some interviews with them included in the case study interviews for the course. So that's going to be coming, and all sorts of other fun stuff that I'm planning for the course. So
Can you talk about one of those case studies? What's one that stands out for you from your students?
Yeah. So this guy Josh runs a site called Test Triggers, which is conversion rate optimization. That's been doing really well. Another guy.
What was Test Trigger? What was that business, and how has his business changed?
Yeah, I think he launched Test Trigger around the time he started with Productize, and so that does like conversion rate optimization. It's like a monthly retainer where he'll work on your website and run A/B tests and implement the better result. So yeah, that's been working out really great for him. Another guy, Chris Vanoy, runs GA Bench, which is Google Analytics kind of consulting. So I think on a monthly retainer, he'll answer all of your questions about your Google Analytics and help you set up like custom dashboards and that sort of thing. So that's another cool one. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. Another friend of mine, Justin McGill, does Lead Fuse, and that's done for you cold email outreach, which is something that is kind of intimidating to a lot of people, but they know how valuable it is. It just sends you leads. So that's another good one.
And you mentioned Dan Norris earlier. He does WPCurve.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually saw him interviewed on TV recently, and for those not familiar, WPCurve specializes in WordPress website maintenance, and they provide a productized service on a month-to-month basis. And I don't think they revealed revenue numbers, but their business is doing quite well from what I've heard.
Yeah, they've been explosive over the last year. I mean, Dan is. That's a really great example of taking a manual service and building it up as a productized service designed to actually scale up. It's not just you doing all the work. It was him in the first week, but then he started hiring and putting those systems in place. And I've seen some of those systems. Like they've been publishing a lot of stuff on their blog, and it's just been exciting to see what he's been doing. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, where can people go to learn more about the productized course that you put together, Brian?
Yeah. So, all of my stuff is at castjam.com. That's my blog, and that's where my newsletter is. On the homepage there, if you're interested in this productized stuff, I have a free email course on that homepage, castjam.com, so you can check that out. I'm CastJam on Twitter, and if you have questions or anything, my email is brian@castjam.com.
Yep. And just to spell that out, that's CASJAM.com.
CASJAM.
Yep. All right. Well, Brian, thanks a lot, and thank you all for watching.
Thanks, Matt.